Hello, this is a presentation on behavior challenges and school discipline, and it is being presented by Emily Olivani, Tamika Alvarado, and Mariah Rodriguez. The objective of this presentation is to provide parents and/or families general information, resources, strategies, and support in regards to their child or children exhibiting behavior challenges and what their school does for disciplinary measures regarding those. Why is the topic of behavior challenges and school discipline important? The word discipline is naturally targeted in a negative connotation, but it really is just a positive and helpful way to teach children to follow rules, set boundaries, or correct misbehavior. It can also help children meet their goals by making them seem easily achievable, manage anxiety and emotions, encourage good choices, and to keep children safe. Children trust adults to keep them from going, in quotations, too far. That is why they test the limits and boundaries that we set for them to see how far they can go without getting hurt or getting consequences. There are methods of negative discipline and positive discipline. Punishment is a form of negative discipline. It's often used to get rid of or end a behavior immediately, but does not teach children the skills needed to socially resolve their problems by themselves. Modeling, which is a great part of positive guidance, is a great strategy to teach children how to independently solve conflicts with each other, which boosts their social skills and development. It avoids having to use punishments and can naturally incorporate discipline strategies. It changes the behavior long term, which advances success for the child. Positive discipline, which is sometimes known as corrective consequence or positive guidance, works just as quickly, and it can be more effective than punishment. Positive guidance is based on the belief that any means of child guidance should focus on building up a child's self-control rather than solely focusing on a behavioral outcome. Positive guidance focuses more on building the child's control over self than the adult's control over the child. When children disobey rules or display other challenging behaviors, it's easy to give them a consequence that's going to make them unhappy enough to stop what they're doing, but it's not likely to change children's behavior in the long term. Positive discipline encourages the behavior, but it also teaches the children expectations and accountability. It helps children see that there is a connection between what they do and what happens next, the natural and logical consequences. Children who have positive relationships with teachers appear to do better socially and academically in part because they trust their teachers. Positive classroom experiences, as well as routine and scheduling, can create a learning environment where the child can ask for help, show more respect, and generally perform better academically. Without discipline, learning and achievement can be hard to access. The article, Use of Positive Behavior Supports to Address the Challenging Behavior of Young Children Within a Community Early Childhood Program, written by Kwang Sun Cho Blair, Lyce Fox, and Rochelle Lentini, is about a study examining the effects yielded from the implementation of assessment-based behavior support plans on the engagement and problem behavior of 3 young children with behavioral challenges in a community early childhood program. The early child professionals who conducted the study found that after implementing individualized behavior support plans to help manage the behaviors in the classroom of the 3 young children in question, they showed more engagement and less challenging behaviors. These findings support the idea that with support and direction to children and families, behaviors can be improved and managed in the classroom. Having classroom support and direct plans in place makes a positive and beneficial environment that could be managed. It's important for teachers and families to work together and aim for the success of the student. A positive environment makes it less stressful for the teachers and students so they both can learn and grow. Now that we know why the topic of behavior challenges and in turn school discipline is important, take a moment and think, how does this topic specifically relate to my family/school situation? Before you know some important strategies and resources to implement, whether at home or in the classroom, think about what situation you currently have and what you would like to change or make different about it.
On the next couple of slides, I will be talking about strategies that can be used by teachers and families to help improve challenging behaviors. The first strategy that can be used to help improve challenging behavior is called proximity control. Proximity control is a strategy that is used by teachers during instruction, independent work, or small group work. All the teacher has to do is reduce the physical distance between themselves and the student to help redirect the student or limit disruptive behavior. So, for example, if there is a student doodling on a piece of paper instead of listening to the teacher's instruction, the teacher can simply just walk over to the student and stand near them just for a couple of moments to gain the student's attention and put a stop to the disruptive behavior. Proximity control is a great strategy to use because teachers can continue to give instruction without having to stop and engage with the student. This can also be used at home when children are working on their homework assignments. Parents can walk up to their children if they are off task to help redirect them to focus on homework. The next strategy on the list is called behavior-specific praise. According to the IRIS Center, behavior-specific praise is a positive statement directed towards a student or group of students that acknowledges a desired behavior. To implement the strategy into the classroom, the teacher praises a student for performing the desired behavior immediately after the behavior is done, and making sure to use the student's name. For example, instead of saying, "Good job," the teacher could say, "Tammy, you did an excellent job keeping your hands in your lap while waiting for snack to be served." Being specific when you praise students for good behavior is much more meaningful than just saying, "Good job." The students will be encouraged to perform the desired behavior so they can get that praise from the teacher. Behavior-specific praise is a helpful strategy because it can help reduce the amount of time a teacher spends correcting inappropriate behavior and encourage students to perform desired behavior. Families can use this strategy at home as well. It is an easy way to promote positive behavior at home. The next strategy is called replacement techniques. Much like behavior-specific praise, replacement techniques focus on replacing the undesired behavior with the desired behavior. Teachers can implement replacement techniques by providing direct instruction, modeling, and using positive reinforcement. These next strategies will be helpful to use when looking for an alternative for punitive methods like suspension and expulsion. This next strategy is called Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, or PBIS for short. PBIS is a proactive approach schools use to improve school safety and promote positive behavior. When using PBIS, the staff at the school work together to teach positive behavior strategies. Students will learn what the behavioral expectations are and will increase positive behavior overall within the school. The last strategy is called restorative practices, and this strategy helps all students learn to resolve disagreements, take ownership of their behavior, and engage in acts of empathy and forgiveness. Restorative practices can be implemented in the classroom in a variety of ways. For example, if a student has made an unacceptable choice, the teacher can have the student reflect on their behavior by having a discussion with them. Or if the student is able to, the teacher can have them reflect their behavior in writing. Teachers can also have students set goals for themselves. By setting goals, students take responsibility for their actions and find ways to improve. Restorative practices are a great way to encourage students to take responsibility for their behavior and build healthy relationships with their teachers and peers, which can lead to positive behavior outcomes. Now that we have talked about different strategies that can be implemented at school and at home, let's take a minute to reflect about what we just talked about. Which strategy or strategies do you think will be helpful for your situation? Does your child or student need a strategy that would address minor behavior, like the proximity control strategy, or is a more intensive strategy needed to help with challenging behavior?
The following section will go over 5 different resources that can be used for parents or educators to help address and navigate challenging behaviors. The first resource is a virtual lab that goes over challenging behaviors and how to address them. The portion of the lab that I found to be the most useful was section 4, and this is called Resources to Address Challenging Behaviors. It begins by talking about what a challenging behavior is and what qualifies as a challenging behavior, and then it goes into documenting and minimizing these behaviors. This can be helpful for parents who have not necessarily gone through trainings on how to document behaviors. It then goes into providing feedback on children's behaviors, and then what qualifies as a positive or a negative reinforcement. Goes into redirection as well. Gives you things that you can say instead of certain sayings. So instead of saying stop hitting, you can say use gentle hands like this. And it gives many different examples of this. Then it goes into helping children learn how to resolve their conflicts. And then just communicating with families and with educators. It talks about either or, depending on which side you're on, if you're an educator or if you're a parent. So I found that resource to be very helpful when speaking on addressing challenging behaviors. The next resource talks about positive school discipline. This one goes into restorative practices and how they're used in different school environments, and it compares them to a zero tolerance education program. This gives really great information on what restorative practice is. And then it goes into more practices and how to use them in the classroom. Gives you resources on PBIS, social and emotional learning, different positive school climates, school safety, how mental health is important when it comes to education for children. This resource is just really helpful in learning what positive school discipline looks like, as opposed to some older practices that were used within the classroom. The third resource is a forum on PBIS, which is about an hour and a half long, and it just really goes into detail on how to start implementing effective PBIS practices in a classroom environment. Now, this can be helpful for educators or parents. It's more so going to be effective for educators, as they will be the ones really implementing these practices in their classrooms. But it can also be helpful for parents who are putting their child into a school that is very PBIS directed. And this will kind of help them learn what their environment is going to look like at school. And it can also give them tips on how to use this practice at home as well, if there's things that they can do to kind of get their child more comfortable with this practice if they have never been involved in it before. And the fourth resource speaks on toddlers and their challenging behaviors, and it explains on why they do it and how to respond to it. The portion of this resource that I found to be helpful is it teaches children how to handle their strong feelings, and it kind of gives you a little guide on what certain actions may be trying to tell you when they don't necessarily understand how to express these emotions at this age. And then it gives you some tips and tricks on how to talk about feelings and how to cope. It gives you nice books to read and kind of questions and statements you can say while reading these books. And then it just really tells you how to empathize with your child and giving them visual aids. And it talks about letting your child make choices throughout the day, because that can really help them learn how to control these emotions. And it's really important for a child to understand their emotions in order to conquer challenging behaviors, so that way they understand why they're feeling the way they do, and they can pick different ways to respond to that emotion. And then the final and fifth resource is another virtual lab, but this one talks about guidance and how guidance can be a great modeling technique when addressing challenging behaviors. I again liked the fourth section of this module because it talks about embedding opportunities for positive guidance in preschool classrooms, and it talks about distinguishing between positive and negative directions. Again, instead of don't run in here, you can say walk in the hallways, please. Just giving that positive feedback for children instead of a negative discipline. And then it speaks about providing feedback on a child's behavior, giving that more positive, specific behavior praise. Instead of good job, you worked hard on building that structure. And then it just kind of gives more strategies into responding to behavior that is more challenging. It speaks on redirection, and then it gives you some problem solving and behavior support planning. So these 5 strategies are very useful for parents or for educators who are learning to navigate around challenging behaviors and are looking for new techniques to implement in classrooms, at home, or for parents who are looking to put their child in a new environment, kind of seeing what those environments can look like, as PBIS is going to be more of a classroom technique. So those 5 resources can be very useful, and they are available to you now. And you can use them whenever and wherever. They are all on the internet. So as long as you have access to the internet, those will be available to you. After reviewing the resources on the previous slide, I will leave you with the following questions. When thinking about your specific situation, do you believe guidance and redirection can end challenging behaviors? And do you believe restorative practices or PBIS is more effective in a learning environment? These questions can be used as a reflective device for either parents or educators when they are thinking about how to end challenging behaviors in a specific student or in their own child. They can be used to look deeper into guidance and redirection and really decide if they can end challenging behaviors or if one can be more effective than the other. Same goes for restorative practices or PBIS. This can be used to think about on a deeper level whether one works better than the other or if they work better as a combination of the two. And this can be used for educators to decide on how they want their environment to look in their classroom. And this can be used for parents to decide the type of learning environment they want their child to be a part of, if they want it to be a combination of both or one or the other. So these questions are really just used to reflect on the resources given to you and kind of think on that deeper level of the practices that you want to use or want to be seen used on your child or on your students.
Now that you have watched our presentation, think about what next steps you're going to take. How are you going to proceed now that you know this new information?